I'll be going through the answers quickly, so make sure your course book is open in front of you, and please stop and rewind the video as you need to. So, got your book open in front of you? Are your answers in capitals? Want to know why the answers are the answers? Then let's go. For question number 1, if you have a look at the sentence structure, you might scratch your head and think, where is the verb? And that would be exactly the right thing to think, because the verb is missing and that's what we need to include here. So what's the correct form of the verb that we need? Were. For question number 2, you've got to have a look at the context, and by looking at the context it should start to ring some grammar bells in your head. The context is that we're talking about past habits, and if we're talking about past habits, then in your mind you should start to recall, how do we talk about past habits? And one of the things that you should remember is that we need the modal verb would, and that's why would is the answer in this case. For question number 3, ask yourself, who has died? Well, if we ask ourselves that question, then we know that we're referring to the grandparents. So what we need here is a substitutive form, the correct substitutive form, to refer to grandparents. What's the answer? Them. For question number 4, what we need here is the correct preposition that refers to a particular point in time. If you remember your perfect grammar exercises, then you will know that the answer here is since. If we were talking about a period of time, 10 years, 20 years, 1 century, something like that, then we would use a different preposition. But in this case, it's since the Industrial Revolution. For question number 5, the key for question number 5 is the verb before the gap, which is moved. You move from an area into a city. The key for question number 5 is the verb a little bit before the gap, which is move. You move from one area to another, but you also move to do something else. And that's what we need here. We need to create the full infinitive, and that's why the answer here is to. Now for question number 6, there's a number of ways I can explain this, but I'm going to choose the easiest way. You've got to look for little language clues that automatically have little triggers in your head. So for example, if I see a gap before the fact, then I'm going to think straight away that this might well be despite. And now let's turn to the context. The context seems to suggest some kind of contrast, and here despite fits the context very well as well. So here we need despite. For question 7, what we need here is the correct relative pronoun which connects the statement made beforehand with what follows next. What's the relative pronoun that we need? Which. For question 8, the context is that somehow we need these people. But given the language pattern that we're presented with, we're forced to use a negative structure of some kind, but we don't have the negative, which is what we have to include in this gap. So what's the negative word that we need here? Without.